Howdy, everybody. Welcome to Voices in the Dark. I'm Andrea.
I'm John.
And we are learning how to human.
We are, and we're continuing on learning how to stoic. And today we're doing it in an extremely humid room.
It is quite humid, yes.
I think I'm going to be a hot mess on the video version for those who want to check that out. Maybe that sounds appealing.
Mm-hmm. We're both on shotgun mics. Quite keen to see how it sounds.
Yeah,
your one doesn't look great.
No, it doesn't.
We don't have a cover for it yet.
They're meant to be like superior mics, but the whole shotgun thing, I feel like I now have a gun to my head. Like, better make this one interesting, or there's going to be consequences. But I think it is an interesting letter from Seneca to Lucilius. It's number 43, and it's called "On the Relativity of Fame," which is, almost an interesting title. And it's about gossip and reputation, whether you should care what other people think, or relatedly, whether keeping something secret from the world is ever a good idea. And I dug this letter, not least because I disagree with quite a bunch of what Seneca has to say. Or at least it may be, maybe we need to interpret what he's saying a slightly different way that makes sense. But my initial reading, I was like, no.
Okay, I'll be keen to see what you took from it. I forgot. What I wanted to do was have a pre-discussion to break our tradition of let's just start recording and see what happens.
What do you think would be the benefit of a pre-discussion?
Giving us more to think about, I think. Maybe sort of expand, and then we have something more to say rather than discovering during the podcast what we have to say to each other about it.
We can give that a go for the next one, but maybe the downside will be then we will have had the conversation already and it'll sound like we're repeating.
That's what I'm not sure about.
You have to allow some space for spontaneity. Like, it's not exciting if I have my dick out all the time, but if I just whap it out unexpectedly, then there's so much more impact.
So much excitement.
Louis C.K. style. Or probably more.
But you have to ask permission if it's Louis C.K. style.
Okay, it's not spontaneous enough for me. This is our studio and I make the rules. So everybody, for those of you who are worried that I've been sick for ages, this is the next series of recordings, and I'm not sick. Horrible tonsillitis, though, it had been.
Is it tonsillitis, though? Was it?
Sure? I don't know for sure, because it's not like they do a biopsy or whatever, but that was the diagnosis. Lots of antibiotics, which doesn't make you feel good either. But now I'm... just crushed by the usual weight of stress and financial difficulties, but my throat's okay.
Okay, fantastic. No, but it must be something going around, because I also had some coughing and feeling funny in my throat, although that might have also been the ridiculous amount of pollen.
No. Oh, all the pollen, yeah.
Deep throat by plant. I'm being fertilized by some random tree.
Which leads us perfectly to say thanks to our Patreon supporters.
For fertilizing our throats.
Yes, for fertilizing our throats and allowing us somewhat to offset some of the costs that are incurred by making the podcast. And we really appreciate you. We really appreciate you care enough to support us, and that you're prepared to do, some people effectively buy us a coffee a month if you do the $1 a month pledge. Or say our top donor, Brian, who buys us basically a meal a month.
Thank you, Brian.
Decent meal. We love you, Brian. Thank you so much. And for those of you who would like to support the show, please go to patreon.com/vinthed. But if you don't have the money to do so, then it's a huge compliment and really helps us if you just recommend the show to a friend.
Yes, please. Just share it around. We can also, because... It makes the discussion better. Our new Facebook group, which, by the way, if you haven't seen, please check it out. It's linked to our page on Facebook, so you can find it that way, is starting all sorts of interesting discussions.
Yeah, I really like how the discussion's been kicking off. We got about 2,000 people in there already.
It's growing, keeps growing.
And that's just the beginning. So yay. Voices in the Dark.world for all of your show note needs, where you can read our new privacy policy thanks to GDPR if you want. That was one of the most boring few hours I think I've ever spent in my life.
But you were quite excited by it.
I wasn't excited. I was just fearful that the European government would crush us if we didn't have these parroted, lifeless phrases that basically say, if you use a website it's like using every other website, and you're going to be somewhat tracked, so your browser can actually present you with something halfway intelligible.
Yeah, but I mean, what's disguised under all that mumbo jumbo is the fancier stuff that multi-site tracking can do, and the reason why the law is there in the first place. So for those that don't know, it's not just about whether or not Amazon knows that you visited it, but it's the fact that perhaps they're sharing cookies with Google and ASOS and maybe even the neo-Nazis in a way that allows them to go, this guy could be easily swayed into becoming a neo-Nazi. Let's serve him some ads on Facebook that convince him that immigrants are out to get him.
And whilst Amazon's also recommending Mein Kampf to you at the same time.
It's that kind of pervasive big data analysis that allows all sorts of inferences about who you are. Potentially, for example, one of the craziest things is they can guess with some accuracy where you live, like your address, and it's becoming more and more accurate. It rarely makes a mistake. Things like that.
Excellent. Before you just had to worry about dickhead neighbors who'd give you away to the cops. Now, well, never fear, everybody. I don't share my cookies with anyone. So get fucked. Shall we talk about Seneca?
Yes.
It's our thing. So this begins with gossip. And gossip basically is king when it comes to knowing about other people. Seneca kicks off by saying, "Do you ask how the news reached me and who informed me that you were entertaining this idea of which you had said nothing to a single soul? It was that most knowing of persons, gossip." So it's like, you wonder how I know what's on your mind? Well, word on the street, my friend, has already reached me.
Yeah. So I was thinking when I was reading this both in Italian and English to try and make sense of it, that we should rewrite these letters in the language of what they actually mean rather than trying to translate word by word. Because I feel like it sounds like what a kid with a thesaurus trying to make the copy paste from Wikipedia not match up to the software that recognizes plagiarism.
Well, I tell you what, I think there must be, though I haven't looked closely, there will be better translations than the one that we're using, but we were using it because the Tim Ferriss audiobooks that we were recommending in the past, and it's still good to listen to, they use this version, and it's on Wikisource too, which makes it easy for anyone to read along if they want to. Whereas other ones, and this, all these ancient texts get translated and retranslated, but I don't know if there's going to be necessarily a really good one. Because I guess people want Seneca to sound like
clever
and old.
Yeah, it seems overwrought, this version. At least when I read it out to myself, I feel like it's trying to be pompous rather than using language because it needs to be that articulate. But maybe that's just me.
I don't know. Hang out in Oxford for a while, mate.
Do people talk like that?
Some people talk in a way that's not so dissimilar to this, like very old-fashioned.
I will, in normal conversation, talk about with words that most people would consider me trying to sound clever, but I use them because that explains the concept I'm trying to explain. But there's a difference between that and just kind of word vomiting to sound clever, I think, isn't there?
No, there's a big difference. I think the trouble is that part of it is out of your control, that some people will be #triggered by the fact that you're using words that they're not familiar with, so they feel insecure and they flip back their insecurity over it onto you and think, and like, you're a dick, you're trying to be too clever. Sometimes you can't escape that. It's like the audience. So I really respect and admire when people make the other choice, which is to go, what does that mean? I feel pretty good in the situation where I just go, wait, what does that mean? I don't know that word. Though usually I'm not in that position. Usually I'm in the position of someone going, what? Why? It's funny because it's not that I set out to do it. It's just that I've read a lot throughout my whole life, and I guess I really love some of the music of words. And when there is the perfect word that captures exactly what I'm getting at, rather than using the rough one around the edges, then I'll go for it. But sometimes that does cause a problem in communication.
All right.
And maybe that causes gossip. Seamless link. So people gossiping about Lucilius gossip in general is pretty familiar to us, but Seneca gets right to the heart of the issue about how we respond to gossip and what a good way might be. So he imagines Achilles saying, "What, am I such a great personage that I can stir up gossip? Like, how exciting. People want to talk about me." And I think it can be exciting to know that anyone gives enough of a shit to actually gossip about you and what you do. And this made me remember this kind of weird little situation quite a bunch of years ago where I had carnal relations with a young man at uni. And it was all fun, sweet. I didn't know him like well before, so I didn't know like his social circle or anything else. We were at the same college, and it was all fun. And then like sometime later, maybe a week or so later, he said, "Oh, people have been talking about us." And I'm like, okay, what do you mean? And like he was really kind of worried and anxious. It seemed that because people he knew or friends were like, "Oh yeah, you did this with that guy," and we're talking about it. I'm like, well, who, what? Like, first of all, what was it that they were saying? That was unclear. This guy just seemed upset that anyone would be discussing it at all. And secondly, the people that he mentioned, I think one or two had maybe said something, I don't know, something semi-slanderous about me, or just something about the, oh
Okay.
yeah, he was also trying to get with this guy or that. And I'm like, but who are you? And why do you know enough about me to have an opinion about me at all? I found it so surreal. It was like I was standing on like the balcony watching this little play out on stage, and suddenly in the play they're talking about me. And I'm like, huh? But what? We're not in the same world.
It's also very weird to me, and this might be like, let me know. Is it homophobia?
Okay.
That when gay people throw away like half of the benefits of being gay, but essentially becoming 17th century ladies and going, he did not have sex with that guy. I'm like, why do you bring on that weird baggage that you don't need to? Which is,
why would you want it?
Yeah.
Well, I was having an interesting conversation about this with a friend the other day, and I thought maybe to some people listening in, they would have thought, my friend sounds a bit homophobic or has like odd views, and yet it seemed to make some kind of sense to me too. It was like, yeah, but you gay guys, you kind of have like it's a different situation, a different thing for you, that there isn't an underlying set of concerns about having kids, having that sense of wanting to be able to build a home for a family with that sense of loyalty based around like an investment in the enterprise of having a family before a woman is infertile and this sort of thing. So it's like, it's a different set of context that you're in, meaning that if you want to just go free loving, free banging around the place, that's kind of your thing. It's so much more on the table. And I thought, so part of me wants to object to that. And part of me is like, well, you may have a point. Not because I think that that's an inherent natural situation. I think it's that in the cultural context, those sorts of expectations and pressures on straight people are real. There is a sense of like, oh, these are the things I should do, and I place value on them. So the happiness that might come from them is real because you're placing value on it.
Right. And there's like more than 2,000 years worth of social pressure of that actually being a really bad consequence if you fuck it up, coupled with like literature and everything being centered around that being a thing.
This idealization of these concepts. And I thought, well, I still end up a little in two minds, because that kind of statement can slip into the idea that wanting to have a long-term partner who you care deeply about and want to build a life with and so on, that's also definitely a possibility as a gay person, and for me is very important too. But it doesn't have to be directly connected with monogamy, sexual or emotional, for different people, different like varieties of that exist.
If your relationship is messed up by not conducting polygamy very effectively leading to a breakup, you haven't wasted your biological investment of having made kids.
It's true, but I think it is pompous when we think of it as like a biological investment. And like, yeah, you just banged some chick, man. That's what you did. And then an automatic process happened.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not real. It's more of
As that feels, maybe.
But it's not even conscious. It's everything that arose around courtship and mating ritual has been informed by the consequences of messing it up, resulting in you not being able to raise your kids to adulthood.
Well, the world's overpopulated, so
the people that were more likely to be jealous or put an emphasis on trying to maintain a monogamous relationship have been, since the agricultural revolution, been selected for.
Yeah, and then there's the pernicious role of gossip that keeps all of this in place.
Yes.
And so you get caught in this matrix, and that's partly then, I think, like the backlash effect of that is then many gay people who wanted to have equal gay marriage essentially wanted to do the thing that my friend said is mostly the thing that is an imperative on, or is incumbent on, straight people. Oh, we need to get married and we need to have a kid, like through like adoption or whatever kind of fertilization, and then that means we are proper people who are worthwhile and part of society. Now, I sound judgmental just because I feel that narrative has been shoved down my throat as though equality means doing the same thing as the most like conservative, boring mainstream. And that is annoying. And if people want to go listen, if you haven't already, to our interview Sex and Relationships episode with Cassie Blanton, and we talk more just not solely from the gay perspective, but as a straight polyamorous woman. I don't know if she would use the word polyamorous or not, but certainly like free loving. It's not necessary to remain trapped in this particular frame of reference either.
No.
But it is more common for straight people to be in that bucket, and it seems more like there is an existing model for gay people to be more in the other bucket, the sex bucket.
Well, this is a way in which the conservatives are kind of right, and that contraceptives and income equality has resulted in more sluts.
And I think that's great.
It's a good thing. And hopefully the trend continues. Because if one chooses, physical and emotional relationships should be a low-cost investment.
Low cost, high reward, please.
Yeah. And it's only like, policies and behaviors which drive that to be a thing should only be rewarded, like trying to eliminate as many STDs as possible, or having good education around preventing them so people aren't afraid to have sex. All these kinds of things. The more we make it, although if we make it too easy and commonplace, we'll become boring.
I guess we still need a little bit of a little more taboo around the edges. I guess.
Not sure though.
But I found it fucking weird to be the fact that I had consensual, enjoyable sex with someone was cause for people to start
gossiping. Yeah.
I mean, what could be the motivation? I think it's often a sense of just like jealousy, envy, and wanting to be feeling in a position of power over a story that otherwise might just be interesting in itself.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, the point that Seneca makes is that it's relative.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying, if you listen to the gossip of Rome, you're never gonna come up. But in your provincial little town, you are a star because there's like, I don't know, 20 people to talk about, and there's only like 3 or 4 events per month that happen around these 20 people, and therefore whatever happens is interesting.
And then it is important when he's saying to Lucilius, watch what's happening in your province. Don't care about what people are saying in Rome. Is that then you need to hopefully listen to the gossip, cultivate it. It's not just like shove it away and like kill your enemies if they're saying negative things, but that's where it matters. There is, I think there's a real psychological itch that can come up if we know that people far away are talking about us and we don't know what it is they're saying. Like, it shouldn't matter at all, But I think there's a tendency to be like, oh, I bet like they're probably dragging my name through the dirt, or they're saying this or they're saying that.
It's it's not dumb to be worried about what other people are saying about you, because as a social ape, if they are bad-mouthing you, that could fuck up your life, potentially. I mean, these days it matters less and less, as the people that badmouth you have less and less influence overall to your ability to have a job, have another relationship, get what you want. But it's hard to remove that sort of, bias.
That's true. What do we have with Seneca? He talks about the greatest friction that can come when it comes to like gossip as to whether it really matters or not is localized, because when it's right in front of you, you really feel it one way or the other. So he says, any point which rises above adjacent points is great at the spot where it rises. So if you're right there and you can see the contrast close up, you're aware of the distinction. Whereas he says, for greatness is not absolute. Comparison increases it or lessens it. A ship which looms large in the river seems tiny when on the ocean. A rudder which is large for one vessel is small for another. Which is a good point. The idea of greatness and significance is totally in comparison to what you're measuring it against. The same way that saying something is large has no meaning unless you are referring to something which is less big.
Yeah.
But I think we really forget that when we use language like, oh, it's a really, really big dick. But not necessarily.
No, and this is, I touched upon this when we did the little video where you interviewed me about, is there truth? And
there is no truth.
Which, when I say there is no truth, what I mean is truth is relative to the parameters that you establish. So this dick is huge is based on the other dicks you have seen. The moment there's one that is 5 times longer than that one, then that dick is no longer huge. But so the hugeness of it wasn't an intrinsic property. It was based upon the bell curve around all the others you'd witnessed.
The bell curve. Weren't we talking to someone about this like the other week, and she had always thought that her boyfriend's dick was really big, and then discovered that wasn't so when she moved on to new pastures.
Who was that? I can't remember.
Well, I don't want to say the name on the podcast, but yeah, it's probably... Did you hear what they said about you on the podcast? It was a podcast about gossip. What kind of wankers are these guys? So Seneca goes on to say, know that you cannot escape gossip. So that maybe we should just name her. Men are asking what you do, how you dine, and how you sleep, and they find out too. Hence, there is all the more reason for your living circumspectly. So what he's saying here, and this is where I start to disagree.
Okay.
Beginning too, is he's saying, okay, well, if people want to know about you, they're going to find out about you. But what he thinks that means is you should therefore live a quiet and virtuous life, because otherwise there's going to be the judgment that you don't want. Mm-hmm. And this, I'll get deeper into it in a minute as we continue through this section, but immediately reminds me of the kind of oppressive governmental idea of like, well, if you've got nothing to hide, you shouldn't be worried that we're installing CCTV cameras in your bedroom.
So I also read that, so I sort of sat with that for a second, and I had to read both the Italian and the English version before I made my decision, because I was kind of going down the same path you were. Mm-hmm. But I started to think about it, especially the way he closes. The last sentence he says made me think that what he's trying to say is what, half of the internet marketers these days say, which is be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Don't do things that you wouldn't want to have discovered because you feel shameful, you feel like they're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're already punishing yourself, those things are already wrong, you already damaged your moral character by doing something you know is wrong to yourself,
mm-hmm.
and therefore you're in fear of other people finding out.
I agree, and that's where I get to. That was my other potential reading of what he was saying. But
you think he actually meant be boring and don't do anything too bad?
Well, I get the feeling maybe as this old man maybe that is the kind of like old person's attitude that you fall into because you forgot all the crazy shit that you did in your youth, and maybe you disown some of the crazy shit that was actually fun at the time because now you're leading a different life, and so you have to have this like total clean break with who you used to be, as though being someone different in the past is a terrible stain. Like you should have been consistent all the way through.
Well, it doesn't make sense to most people because of the way that we misidentify the self, our identity. You know, we bestow values and ideas into our identity, but also we think that it's contiguous, like one joined up thing that is constant. So when we can no longer feel excited, let's say, by promiscuous sex, and we can't imagine why we ever did, the idea that we were somehow different doesn't seem like it's something that is threatening to most people's identity. The idea that it's not going to be fixed, that you could be different tomorrow. And so what they decide, most people, is that they were young and foolish and now they've improved, or something to that.
I had a text message recently which was along these lines that I really didn't appreciate, where an old friend of mine, but someone that I'm not in like close contact with these days, was like just saying, "Hey, how you doing? Where you been?" I said, "Oh, well, yeah, I just went on a little trip a little while back to Amsterdam with my boyfriend, and we went to a gay sauna and we had really exciting sex, and it was really interesting." We'll have more of that on another episode, I think. And you know, this wasn't like, this was a kind of friend where this is a friend I've had sex with. It's not like sex is off the table in our kind of conversations.
Yeah.
So it's not just me going, whoa, let me just blow your mind with this stuff. But he's in a different place with his life now. And so he immediately turned to saying, "Oh, John, when are you going to become a nice little gay like me and like settle down?" Because now he's married to a man, married and got his 9-to-5 banking job and all of this kind of stuff. And because, of course, it's a text, you can't really tell the tone of it. So maybe it was much more playful. But in that moment, I was tired and I didn't appreciate that sort of out of nowhere moralizing judgment. It was as though because I'd done something that doesn't fit into his picture of a good life, and which is, I think, very much from another message that was part of this, you know, for him, it's like, I've put my whoring days behind me, because there is just a certain point when naturally people realize that you can't find fulfillment in meaningless throwaway sex.
The problem is he was looking for fulfillment in meaningless throwaway sex.
I wasn't. I was just
having fun.
I was having some fun with other people who were also having some fun, or on their own journeys, whatever. And so it was this sort of, just by saying that I'd done something, which is a thing that he had renounced in his personal story of progress to being a good person. And yet also the tension of it, I'm sure, comes from the fact that he's probably not entirely satisfied with his current situation, that part of him misses, and we've had conversations like a few years ago, misses that sort of excitement. It's the tension between like, oh, you know, I didn't feel so good when I was chasing something and having all these random shags. But it was fun, though.
And it's all tied to identity and people's inability to separate what they do and what has happened to them from who they are. Like, and it's retarded. Like, I can't stand it.
In some, sir.
I watched a movie yesterday, which was really beautifully shot, interesting story, super well acted. The Danish Girl, in which Eddie Redmayne, Redmayne, that's the one, plays a tranny. Let's be politically correct here.
So politically correct.
Well, basically, this Danish painter that after, I mean, the story is kind of simplified up. It probably took way longer than that. But he's made to put on some stockings and female shoes by his wife, who needs to finish a painting where the original settee was missing in action. And he loved it. And he loved it. And it just awakened something in him that later he said, oh, it turns out his new personality is called Lily, by the way.
Okay.
So that Lily was always there. You just brought it to the surface. I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, that's maybe what you decided. But anyway, so in 1926 or something like that, this man decides to try surgery that's never been tried before and slowly get chopped away and turned into a woman and dies. We checked it out. It's a real story. The real person died when the surgery to implant someone else's uterus resulted in rejection and infection.
Was the uterus willingly given? How did you just get a random uterus donor?
I don't know. I guess it was a recently dead woman. I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't look into it.
With an infection, perhaps.
All done by a German doctor that was like, sure, we can try that.
Oh, 1920s.
But I kept thinking, do you need to have the body of a woman to be a woman? If you truly believe that gender is not a biological construct, it is who your soul is. Why do you need the physical to reflect what's inside? And why is it tied to that? Why is it that if you have female genitalia, like a butchered version constructed by what is essentially a kid playing with Play-Doh, because that's how far doctors are in terms of plastic surgery. You know, we're still, it's the kind of art that you go, that's nice, dear, I'll put that on the fridge. It's that level of skill that doctors have with plastic surgery reconstruction of genitalia. It's gotten better, but why would you do that to yourself thinking that it'll make you feel whole? Surely who you are and who you, like, if it is your soul, is whole on the inside. Anyway, that was my kind of, that was a thought that I had.
I mean, I love that you would bring such an easily dealable with subject into the middle of this podcast and just like lay it all out there.
I'm not sure. I mean, I get the concept on some level. At the same time, if I woke up tomorrow in the body of a woman, I'll be like, well, first of all, I'll be like, this is fucking weird. But I wouldn't try to surgically change it back into a man because I know that the result will be subpar. I'd rather be a good woman than a horrible man. Person.
I mean, I wish you were a good woman rather than a horrible man.
I mean, if it was possible to 3D print a perfect body, sure, fine. But
well, I think I've got some speculations on like the questions that you're asking. So one of I guess the main thing was why is there a drive in some people that if they feel that they are a woman, if they were born biologically male, why do they want to then have the woman's body? Because does it have to be like the physical sign of it in the world? I guess a big part is wanting to be received and understood through the world as the thing that you feel yourself to be. And if you go through the world being constantly reacted and responded to as if you are like the other category, and if there's a binary category, as we mostly think about it, it can be extremely jarring, I would think, to constantly be received as something that you're not.
But that's only if you place importance on how others perceive what you are.
Well, I'm afraid most people do.
Yeah. I don't feel like a man.
Well, what if you went through life and you're extremely nice and kind to everyone around you, but somehow everybody treats you like you're a scary, violent threat? Think of like
That's
guys.
happened to me.
well, like think of guys who are like big, 6 feet tall. They've been born like over 6 feet. Not born over 6 feet. They're big guys. They're musty. They look hench. They look a certain way. The other people are scared of them or expect them to be like the negative stereotype of a jock all the time. And that's how the world reacts to them. But that's not who they are inside. That also is painful and jarring. So if there was a way in which to change that so that you wouldn't have to constantly prove to everyone around you who you actually are, then I could see why you might want to try and make some adjustments.
No, I understand it as a concept, I guess, but if the result was going to be poor and leave you, well, in this case, dead.
I think there is a genuine. It's a very touchy topic, so I don't know what people will think about it. But I think there may be an over-encouragement of surgery for trans people because it is an incredibly dramatic, significant thing to do to your body, as many surgeries are. It's not something that can just be like Command Z undo.
No.
Like you could try and go back, but again, it's not going to be like it was before. And whilst I think it's really positive and healthy to say, yes, okay, if you're feeling like you are the other gender to what you were, we're going to go along with that. We're going to treat you that way. Your name is Lily now. Okay, you're Lily. Let's go with that. Then maybe at least take some time to experience being that identity without feeling like it's only going to be real if you have the physical surgery done.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, we want to make a huge change in our lives, which not to do with like sex reassignment or whatever it might be called. And we do it out of a sense of like pressure and intensity, and this is going to solve my problem. I'm going to just quit my job, or I'm going to tell like my boss that he's a cunt, or my life doesn't work, so I'm going to move to another country immediately, dump myself there. And then it doesn't work because maybe that wasn't the underlying problem. Maybe we were just looking to take some sort of dramatic action which completely seems to change our lives up, but wasn't really in touch with the thing that was causing the pain. So finding the thing that's causing the pain, or at least doing a nice test run on, okay, I'm Lily now, so let's be Lily, but I don't need to get the knives out right yet, would be a kinder and safer and more understanding way for people to find themselves, I suppose.
I think so. And the movie does touch upon the fact that essentially everyone's telling him that he's sick and he needs to be cured. And I think that's what leads him to her to do what she does as no, I am a woman.
I'll show
and
you.
Now
and now you can't disagree.
I am going to be cured. I'm going to be cured from having had the outward appearance of a man back to what I'm supposed to be.
Being cured of dick.
I wonder if the more various forms of trans become accepted, hopefully over the next few decades, now that the movement seems to have caught some traction and RuPaul's Drag Show is a hit show on Netflix, whether the number of total number of genitalia surgeries will drop, because the less people attack or judge or ridicule, the less you probably feel like you need to have like a clean break with who you used to be and have something drastic that essentially kills your old identity for the new one to be reborn.
I mean, maybe also could be more space made, as in some cultures, like some Native American cultures and like in Thailand, where there is the third gender, where it's the not one, not the other, somewhere in between. And that's its own thing, and that's just how some people are. There you go. No need. I think part of the jarring and the problem and the desire for surgery is the fact that society constantly says you're in this box or that box.
Yeah.
So we need a middle box.
Well, I mean, it is a controversial topic. I hope no one thinks that I'm attacking that trans people. I have no problem whatsoever. But it's more about how I feel about my own identity. To me, I am my thoughts. That's it. My outward appearance and who I am in a physical sense is interchangeable and optional. And if it changes, and if the altered carbon version of the world was true, and you could wear different bodies at different times, I would find that quite easy to deal with.
But how does that fit with when you've spoken in the past about when you were in your bodybuilding days that you felt most yourself when you were jacked?
Because I felt strong and healthy and confident. I guess there is some visual aspect to that, but it was more about the discipline and strength rather than the visual look of it.
Okay.
Personally. So I mean I'm human, I'm not like a robot, so I'm sure I am slightly biased towards the way I look. I wouldn't want to be in an uglier sleeve. Like if I woke up and I was in a woman, I'd be more okay than if I woke up and I was in an ugly man.
Okay. How hot does the woman have to be?
Equivalent. Okay. I want equivalence. I don't want to go down in the on the 10-point scale of hotness. Although I wonder, I mean, it'll be hard to measure. I mean, you could only decide if you found yourself hot to yourself, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean,
maybe
we're in our 30s now. It's all a downhill slope. We're already degrading on the 10-point scale. No, it's fine. There's loads of people with daddy issues. We're safe. We're safe for a long time. Should we return to what Seneca has to say?
Sorry.
No.
Like a slight detour here.
This is you apologising for doing the podcast. This is how it always goes. This was just a little more of an in-depth segue or tangent.
Okay, so
Sorry for the shitty audio there, everyone. We like the proper audio dropped off.
Cut out. My bad. I didn't plug my laptop in.
Yeah, brilliant maneuver, but hopefully we've captured the little bit that was not recorded properly from the camera audio.
Yeah, it'll just sound a bit echoey, that's all.
So, we were going back to the Seneca.
Back to Seneca.
At this point. So Seneca says, do not, however, deem yourself truly happy until you find that you can live before men's eyes, until your walls protect but do not hide you. Although we are apt to believe that these walls surround us, not to enable us to live more safely, but that we may sin more secretly. So I like to kind of wander around and kind of skip Seneca's point for a second. I really like the idea of having walls that might protect but that don't really hide you. Because I think that's like I pictured it as being like a emotional force field around you that means that it's not that you're being closed down and not sharing and hiding who you are, but there's still a border which means that not just anyone can get in and trample around all over your emotions, which is what I hope I'm been working towards, because I was having a conversation the other day and someone was saying, why do you think it is that you're so open? And I'm like, well, I have wondered whether it's a good thing at times, but it's just it's how I am, which is funny because I think that like my family are quite the opposite, and I don't know if it was some sort of rebellion against that.
Well, we tend to overcompensate over things that we wish our parents gave us. You know, my mom was the opposite of neglectful.
So you were extremely neglectful
to a fault. No, like because I was sort of relating her back to her parents' behavior.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Because my mom was one of 14 brothers and sisters, and because my grandma was constantly pregnant, and they all had to work because they were dirt poor, and my grandfather was, you know, old-fashioned and a misogynist. You know, like my mom did not have the best of childhoods. She rarely got attention unless she was sick physically, which she was. So she got more attention than some of the other kids because she had like really severe asthma and kidney problems. And that was the only reason she got more attention when she got attention. So like that was related. She hated that so much that when she had kids, she made sure that she was always available to play, that she gave everything of herself, like to the point that she actually gave too much of herself. You know, the whole, you know, put your oxygen mask on first before you put it on somebody else. She struggles with that. But it was like almost a rebellion against that because she didn't get it from her parents. She wanted to make sure that she gave it to her children. And I think this would be something similar for you. You wanted openness and discussion and kind of...
some sense that there was actually, I don't know, a human behind the walls. Of just saying, nope, that's how it is, or, oh, this is a difficult or sensitive subject, so we're not going to talk about it. I was confronted with this over like a family dinner recently and was just like, oh, Jesus, it's all the more vivid to me now that as soon as anything like personal or challenging or difficult comes up, whoops, steer the fuck away from that. Let's not talk about that.
Run away,
bottle it up, and so on. So for me, then the importance and why of this force field, I think, has been the thing that I've needed to work on and have worked on a lot, of being able to be what I want to be, which is open, not just pretending to be something or someone else, which I did for a while, especially growing up, but to not simultaneously leave myself just open and vulnerable to people to come in and trample all over that, because people can definitely they can take advantage of you laying it out there. It's like people say, I think rightly, that if you already put all the shit out in the open, people can't attack you for it. Well, I think it's not that. They can attack you for it, but it only hurts if you're not feeling sort of in control of this, or you feel like their attack could actually damage you in some way. Which leads on to something else that I'm getting to. Via some more Seneca. We tend to fear letting people see who we are, and it comes down to a kind of shame, Seneca says, which he then sees as a reason to totally live the kind of life we'd never be ashamed for people to see. And he says, "You'll scarcely find anyone who can live with his door wide open. It is our conscience, not our pride, that has put doorkeepers at our doors. We live in such a fashion that being suddenly disclosed to view is equivalent to being caught in the act." The act, Seneca. Your mum walking in on you, playing with Rosie Palm and her 5 beautiful daughters.
Huh? Oh.
See?
I didn't know what you were talking about, but I got it. Okay, new euphemism.
So I think there's some big problems with this shit, because the kinds of things that we want to do and be in private might not even make sense in a public context. Like, because of the assumptions and impositions that other people make, even if we're not ashamed of the activity that we're doing, if we put it in front of them, they may seek to shame us. Or it doesn't make sense that, I don't know, let's keep talking about masturbation. Like, totally fine to wear, but, you know, doing it in the public square in front of all the families.
Less okay.
Judgy. The fact that you want, like, kinky sex or you're a slob around the house is hardly relevant knowledge for everyone in the world, which is not to say that you're ashamed of it, but it's not the stuff that they need or have some kind of right to know. And part of this setup that Seneca seemed to describe was as though you should live as though the door could be wide open all the time. The real problem, I think, is whether we are ashamed. We do need private spaces in and of themselves. But then I was thinking of the, like, doing sexy cam shows situations, still to talk about that, separate episode. And obviously people said to me when I said I was thinking about it and then I was doing it, they're like, oh, but what if people find out? Like, people who know me or potential people who would hire or not hire me for whatever. And I realized that, you know, I guess it would depend how much sleep I've had or what mood I'm in if this actually came about, but I could only feel ashamed of it. Well, people could attack me and try and shame me, but I would only feel ashamed if I thought that I had done anything wrong, and I don't.
Right.
And that's the distinction of, like, how people can't hurt you unless you're agreeing with their assessment.
Yeah. Although sometimes it's hard not to have slight agreement over something like that, purely based on social conditioning.
The weight of it.
You're 80-90% okay with it, but you know,
they can
the
still
way
press
that your
buttons.
parents talked about sex when you were 3 is somewhere inside you, so that when that tiny part of you that isn't sure whether it's right or wrong gets triggered, you might feel uncomfortable.
For sure. And that's why I think, like, if I was tired or grumpy, where you feel kind of more vulnerable and default to some of those baseline settings. But it's also and not a shame factor, but the fact that I don't want to have to waste the energy, spend the energy defending myself against people who've got a problem with things that I want to do with my life. And that really irritates me when you're sort of in that, oh God, you're pissing me off so much, but I don't want to have to get up and try and convince you otherwise. But when you're being accused of something, it's pretty hard, and this is, I guess, the core of gossip, it's pretty hard to just let it wash over you and ignore it, because it's like, hey, that's not true. Let me set the record straight.
Yeah.
So the challenge. I don't know if Seneca was into cam shows, but
I'm sure you would have been.
Why not? It's such a funny one for there to be such an issue around. It's like it's as dumb as how, like, Putin's government connected homosexuality with paedophilia, as though it's basically the same thing, or one is a threat of the other.
Yeah, which is stupid, but it's a smart move.
Oh, okay, here we go.
Like,
well, a smart, like, PR move for him.
Politically.
Yeah, okay.
You
so
know,
find a scapegoat and
like,
make
what
it.
people otherwise end up going, well, does it really matter what they're doing in their own home? Like, I'm not, even if I find it personally disgusting or wrong, like, I don't give a shit. It's like, and then he goes, but they it leads to pedophilia. My children are not safe, and then that changes the conversation.
It does. So yeah, it's a wise move if that's your aim.
If you're an asshole trying to...
You're a massive asshole.
Funnily enough, I've heard that he probably doesn't give a shit, but it's a great way to polarize and unite.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's entirely what it's about. Putin, I really don't believe would care much. My guess, based on his character, is that he probably thinks, like, it's kind of distasteful gay stuff, but that's what some people are like. Whatever. They're not real men. I don't care. That's my guess at what's on the inside of Putin's mind.
Funnily enough, in the House of Cards version of Putin, which is not Putin, but Putin-esque, Hey, should we make a Russian pasta called putanesca?
What will it be
Putanesca?
shaped like?
I don't know. No, but it's the sauce that would be different. Like
Okay.
there is a sauce called putanesca.
Oh,
That's
okay.
that's the point. Anyway,
Well, it's an Italian pan. How was I going to get it?
I thought maybe you'd heard of the
No,
sauce.
No, sorry.
No, okay.
Just Dolmios.
Oh,
House of Cards. He's like, what?
they bring up in the plot like the jailing of an equivalent of the was it Pussy Riot? What were they called?
Pussy Riot.
So there's an equivalent of that, and they're challenging him privately, and he's like, you know, some of my best friends are gay. Like I don't give a shit, but like there was a political reason behind it.
That's true. There's plenty of like prominent but not officially out gays in like Russian media or even in political positions. So it's not actually like, oh no, you can't be this thing. It is propaganda.
Yeah.
Would I have something else to say about the... I thought I had like the tail end of thought about the cam show thing. Yeah, by making that weird equivalence of like, this leads to this. It's like, you shake your ass naked on the internet in front of an audience of adults who freely choose to give you money because they like what they see. No way you'll be able to like give any lectures in schools or or that kind of thing. Like, oh, you will like pull the reputation of the company that might employ you through the mud. This is completely unacceptable behavior in your private time amongst an audience of consenting adults where nobody is being harmed, abused, insulted, or anything else.
Yeah, I mean, like, once again, why are we imposing things that we don't need to? Like, the same as the heterosexual behavior from the 17th century not being particularly useful for gay men. This seems to be, you know, old-fashioned. Like, in the 1950s, if you're a porn star, you probably wouldn't get a great job. But these days, who gives a shit?
Well,
I suppose they wouldn't want you to be a school teacher. But that would also be wrong, like, as a concept.
It is completely wrong. It's not just about a gay thing or imposing on that. Like, anyone who does a cam show is going to be, potentially, could face this kind of nonsense. Let's just move on and not give out my handle yet. So then this is the end of the letter, and it was basically, I came around to the sort of nuance of what you were saying earlier. So what Seneca wrote was, good conscience welcomes the crowd, but a bad conscience, even in solitude, is disturbed and troubled. If your deeds are honourable, let everybody know them. If base, what does it matter that no one knows them, as long as you yourself know them? How wretched you are if you despise such a witness. So I think like the useful bit is not to think of this as the literal crowd outside, like the witness being like the people on the street, because fuck them. Like, imagine, let's ask the audience, what do you think? Oh my goodness, you're generally pretty conservative twats. But what's more important is the imagined witness that we create in our mind, because we think that, what people say is more like we're judging ourselves and being negative and not allowing the authentic self, as you said, to come out. So instead, if we could use that as like a little course correction to what genuinely feels right for us, rather than having this internal clash of forces, then that witness would be helpful. It's like, instead of putting the thing that you really like doing in the shame box, don't put it in the shame box. To be clear, don't be fucking kids. I'm not saying that's okay.
Oh, did you see that guy that's running for Congress in America who is an out pedophile?
No, I did not see that.
I mean, I'm sure he's not going to get very many votes, but you should read the article that quotes him, saying things, basically advocating rape as okay, like raping your wife is fine. Like, it's insane. And this is an actual person running for Congress.
I guess
we have to include a link. Like, I was reading it and I thought it was like satirical.
And then, so. You can. Do you have to do something like to be able to run for Congress? Do you just put down some money or something? Because how did this man get in this position?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Did someone just give him a microphone?
I guess you have to have a certain number of backers or votes or something to get put on the ballot,
was he
or-
just at like his local pub and someone was doing karaoke and he grabbed the mic and he was like, guys, I'm running for Congress and fucking kids is great, and if you don't rape your wife, you're not a man. And everyone was like, yeah, and then suddenly he's going to be in Congress.
I don't know, but you have to read this. It's preposterous. It's like, I don't even know how to explain what he says.
I'm astonished even from this brief description. And that's the end of Seneca. We gossiped too, but the paedophile congressman doesn't know about it, and he shouldn't be affected by it. He has to look to his inner compass and follow his heart.
I think he's doing that very effectively.
So that's what we should all be like, and Seneca would be proud of him.
What's the problem with being authentic? What if you're authentically a cunt?
I don't know. I think I prefer the authentic cunt to the one who claims that they're not.
Well, I suppose. I mean, overall, it's better if everyone's authentic in terms of collective benefit. But individually, it's punishment. It's often a punishment to be yourself.
Yeah, don't we know it?
What a great note to end on.
Thanks for listening, everyone. I'm glad that you are. Most people aren't. Till next time, please be silly, be kind, and be weird.